What's going on, guys? Dan Watson, learningcameras.com, and we've got a brand new Sony A7S here. I am so excited to get this camera. I've been shooting with Canon cameras for a long time. The 5D3 is one of the cameras that we're going to be putting this up against, and the Canon 70D that I'm using to shoot this with have been long cameras that I've owned for a while and have really been a staple in my video shooting. But now that this has come along, we're getting a full frame camera for even a fraction of the price of the 5D Mark III with some unbelievable features, unbelievable low light results. We've got focus peaking zebras, output, HDMI output, even output at 4K if you want to kind of future-proof this camera. So this is really a whole nother level of camera than we're used to with some of these cameras at a fraction of the cost, which is amazing. Now, Sony does use a different type of mount on this, so the amount of lenses that you can get for this are a little bit limited with a small profile. However, throw an adapter on this and all of Sony's awesome lenses are going to be at your disposal. So not really too big of a downside in there. You just have to use that adapter. I think it's like $350, so one more small expense to that, and then you will be equaling the power of something like this. So we're going to put these two cameras right up against each other. I also have a GH4 coming in a couple days. I really want to see the difference in that. Now, that is a much smaller sensor than we have on the 5D3 and the Sony A7S, so this is really a little bit more competition for that. However, the GH4 does give us 4K in camera, so that's really something to consider on whether the bigger sensor is what you're looking for, or that 4K recording built in without any other recording devices. Now, the only recorder right now for the A7S is $2,000, so definitely something you're not going to want to do unless you have to have 4K recording, so keep that in mind. Other than that, this is a really small, lightweight camera. Stay tuned for the full review. I've got a ton of videos coming out on how to use this camera. This is really a camera that I want to own and use long term, or really put up against the 5D3 and other cameras like that to see if this is now the camera or the GH4 that is going to take away my shooting from Canon. I'm not a brand guy, I'm the best camera for the job, so if these guys can do it and they can even do it for a fraction of the cost, I'm going to be all over it. So take a look at my Sony A7 review if you want to get a feel for some of the features on the still side, some of the controls, how the body feels, things like that. Take a look at that review and you'll get the full details on that without waiting for the video settings review. And so yes, on the Sony A7S we're going to be focusing a little bit more on video. However, I will put up a low light test on the photography side too, since we'll probably see some different results from this 12 megapixel camera than what we saw on the A7, which has a 24 megapixel sensor. So I'm curious to see what kind of differences those have. Now, one thing, a couple little first impressions. This is a really small battery. I'm curious to see if this can really pump out the kind of battery life that I need from this camera for on the go, or if I need to carry a kind of a bunch of batteries with me. The good news is you can fit a ton of those in your pocket without taking up any space. Another thing after using this camera, these tabs right here to hold your camera strap, super annoying, super loud. You're definitely going to want to remove those, which kind of eliminates the strap option. Using up this jack right here for a strap like the Black Rapid that I have, that's going to be a little bit of an issue because I use this for my tripods when I'm recording video and stuff like that. So sometimes the strap on here is kind of nice to be able to sling it over your shoulder while you're not using it and then attach a tripod. Now let's get into a little bit of the camera settings. You've got a ton of options on the Sony A7S. I'm talking about tons of frame rates, although 30 frames a second is noticeably absent. However, we can record 1080p all the way to 60 frames per second, and we can also have a ton of AF modes on this. Also, we have focus peaking, zebras, and things like that. Now, one thing I'm really going to test is the AF system on this. I'm using the Canon 70D right now, and this is using the AF system on that camera, which allows me to not have to worry about focusing if I'm recording myself. Now, I have yet to use a camera with a decent enough AF system for me to rely on it. This is really the first DSLR that's given it to me, so I'm curious to see if the Sony A7 is reliable enough to actually use, or if it's more of a gimmick, or every so often you might pull it out, but don't rely on it. And we're definitely going to put that to the test. So stay tuned, subscribe, and we'll have all of the details on this camera, full test with the Canon 5D Mark III, and as well the GH4. So subscribe, www.learningcameras.com. You can even follow us on Twitter @learningcameras, and we'll keep you updated on the Sony A7S.